Yep, Sunday, bhai log, after the World Cup final, I know a lot of you people would be still reeling in the victory, especially all the Team India fans. Commiserations to the Protea fans. I was one of them, supposedly one of them. I'm not going to say anything more than that. We've got Jeet, we've got Neha, we've got a slightly de-voiced Akshay. I'm still, मतलब अभी चिल्ला चिल्ला के इतना voice का ये हो गया. Anyways, a fantastic batting performance yet again by South Africa. We thought day two was a solid showing. They showed ki boss, we can go one step further and play the entire day out without really losing any wickets. In fact, the second session saw them lose no wickets whatsoever. The final session saw them lose just the one wicket. Solid performance. Jeet, Neha, भाई मतलब क्या चल रहा है bowling fielding yes कल भी हमने बात किया था and once again it looks like they've even Team India like most corporate workers have taken the weekend off. Jeet, you can
But
probably start on this.
yeah, that's true. But at least I'm happy that this test match is going to day four. So after day one, the kind of runs that were put on the board by India, it always was going to be a chasing game for South Africa. But they've shown that stubborn resistance that was required, and that was always going to be a priority for them. As soon as India crossed 600, it was always going to be a catch-up game. So I'm just happy that they have been able to show that grit and that proper Protea fire to take the game to day four. But yeah, India have been lackadaisical with quite a few things here and there. The spinners have, not been on the mark throughout or consistently. The fielders, have kind of been a letdown at times. You require, high and sustained levels of concentration. As soon as runs start to flow, the fielders start to lose their concentration, which is very, very, important. Whenever you lose the concentration, that is when a chance comes, and that is when you start making those errors. So you kind of saw that coming from India. So anyway, the good part is how they were able to accelerate their direction towards win in the first session today. They were able to button out South Africa very very quickly and enforce a follow on. So good on India's part to at least do that. But again, I mean, usual suspects in Sune has stepped up. Laura Wolvaardt has contributed. So good signs for South Africa and good that they have taken it to day four.
For sure, very good signs for their batting there. Neha, in terms of how India's bowlers have bowled so far, even Daniel sort of going on to say that was a poor call to enforce the follow on. Of course, a bit of hindsight involved in that opinion there. But they've already bowled 170 overs across 2 days, not something they're used to. You could see that workload tiring them out towards the fag end of the third day. And come tomorrow, they will be expected to bowl at the South African top order yet. It's not even like कि कल की तरह 4-5 wicket जा चुका है. They'll be bowling at the middle order and then, of course, the tail to follow. How do they sort of, motivate themselves, pump themselves up come day four?
Yeah, I mean, today I think, Jeet has already spoken about South Africa's brilliant effort with the bat, but just looking at the Indian bowling in isolation, I think off air also, we were having this discussion of the deliveries being too overpitched, not getting those right line lengths. And even with Rajeshwari Gaikwad, she just wasn't able to get into that groove and rhythm. You just had Sneh Rana, who was bowling beautifully. I think, especially in that South Africa first innings, where she ended up getting those 8 wickets, the kind of line and length she was getting, and the way in which she was able to extract the most from the surface was just very commendable. But lack of support from the other end was kind of hurting, because there's only so much that Deepti Sharma can, kind of do from that. And you could see that restlessness also kind of creep in, because I'm sure India would have not gone to this test match with the mindset that we'll be bowling for 1.5, 2 days and everything. And the situation might, end up coming to that because of the way in which South Africa is, batting now. The second innings, we've seen Laura Wolvaardt. She's building on something really good here. She's not out of 93. Sune has given you that base as well. And Marizan Kaap has been dropped twice, and we know the kind of player she is, right? The impact performances. We have seen enough, performances of her in the past, give us an indication that she is going to come all guns blazing. And not a lot of teams have this credit of, dragging a test match to the fourth day, on Indian soil. So South Africa will pride themselves for that. They trail by 105 runs, but I'm sure, seeing the way the Indian attack looks a little fatigued now, they would want to, make the most of all the possible opportunities and try to, push it for a draw, if not for a win.
I mean, 100% can't agree more there. And just to sort of give you a brief glimpse of what the scores look like. Yesterday, of course, South Africa ended the day at 236 for 4. It was the all-important pair of Nadine de Klerk and Marizan Kaap in the center. We'd spoken about how crucial this pair would be to their chances of eking out a draw. 236 for 4. Unfortunately, they did not last too long. 249 PM. Cup got out. And then the last 5 wickets were taken care of for just 17 runs. The tail did not really wag for South Africa's case. Sneh Rana, pick of the bowlers, a fantastic 8 for 4. Hardeepti Sharma, the only other bowler amongst the wickets. None of them had any sort of, threat whatsoever, posed any threat whatsoever to the South African batters. The second innings then began, and unfortunately for them, once again, it did not really go anywhere. Let's just have that out as well. There you go. You guys can check the scorecard out on our website as well. A solid second wicket partnership between Sune and Laura Wolvaardt ensured कि boss, despite that early dismissal of Vinay Bosch, कुछ नहीं चल रहा है वहां पे. A 190 run partnership between the duo there. Highest ever for South Africa in their short test history. And of course, the second highest partnership for a team against India. And that's again a solid record to have under your belt. So congratulations to Sune. Of course, also got her maiden century in the process. Laura Wolvaardt is just 7 runs away from doing that. Jeet, we cannot not talk about that partnership. Laura, in particular, we'd spoken about how she herself had, been talking ki, bhai, we don't play enough test cricket. We're not sure how to sort of go about, navigating these tricky waters. A very solid showing, yaar. At no point in time did she seem out of control. Despite that low strike rate, you might think, yaar, kya chal raha hai? She seemed at ease.
She did, and that's the advantage. It's true that South Africa don't play a lot of Test cricket, but in order to succeed in the Test cricket, in the Test format, you've got to have good technique, which Laura Wolvaardt does. So, despite that lack of Test cricket, you could see that application because that's all you need. You just need to show application. You need to be patient, which she is. She ticks most of the boxes. It's not that she has a lot of technical weaknesses. Most of it, again, coming against the Pacers. You're not going to get a lot of that. Against spin, we know she is decent. So if you have a decent technique or a decent defensive technique, then you can always, have a successful test career as well. So that is exactly what was on show here. And she was, just bludgeoning out all the spinners really well. All the 12 wickets that have, been taken by India have all been by right arm off spinners. So that's probably another thing to look into. Big factor here has been, of course, Rajeshwari Gaikwad. So I had a lot of expectations from her. And the fact that South Africa only have one left-hander in the playing 11 and 10 right-handers, you'd probably expect the left-arm spin of Rajeshwari Gaikwad to come to the party. But, not having a single wicket whilst all the other spinners have succeeded goes on to tell you that, she hasn't had a good game. So had she been in form or had she had some kind of an impact, then maybe these South African batters would have been tested a lot more. But like I mentioned yesterday, I mean, that patience has been lacking from India, and that is where they are erring. They are probably, pitching one ball in the right area. They are seeing the ball is doing nothing, and then they are overcompensating by, pitching it up or over pitching the ball, and that's where the South African batters have been good to capitalize, including Laura Wolvaardt. Sune has been outstanding. So I think Sune has combined almost batted for 61 overs, and that is what we're talking about, right? The ball column is what matters here when you're chasing a mammoth total of 600 plus. It's batting out time, it's batting out overs, and 61 overs by just one batter. That's commendable from Sune, and it's good to see even Laura Wolvaardt step up because she hasn't had the best of the starts in this particular format of the game. But it's like I said, I mean, she has a technique. It was always going to be a matter of time. The more test matches she plays, the more she's going to excel. And that's what we saw today at that. She finally had a score, and hopefully, she can also get to that done.
Fingers crossed for that for sure. Neha, we spoke about Suneli's yesterday, ki how she did that all-important job of consuming those deliveries and ensuring ki jo bhi hai pressure won't be applied on the other end, from the other end ki matlab aisa wicket ja raha hai, kuch ho raha. She held her end up. In the second innings, she played a slightly different role. She was the aggressor between the two there. Laura Wolvaardt was more than happy to take her time, and Suneli's, credit to her, was more than happy to go after the bowlers. Let's just have the match summary out as well. You can see that 65 of 164 in the first innings, a strike rate in the 30s. And come the second innings, a strike rate in excess of 50, a fantastic ton for Suneli's. Laura Wolvaardt, on the other hand, consumes 252 deliveries. Just going on to show ki bhai hai, skill hai, they can adapt when necessary. They knew what role they had to play, and that was great to watch.
Yeah, actually, I think that's actually a valid point because considering the kind of showings they had in that first innings, they were raring to come back stronger, and perhaps that follow-on was imposed, and they felt this is the perfect opportunity to maximize the opportunity and make the most of it. And Sune Lee's led from the front. They learned from their mistakes in that first innings, just made the most of the conditions. You knew the Indian bowlers were tad bit tired. The fielding efforts were also going thoda idhar udhar. And Sune Lee's, yeah, I mean, the experience really shows, right? Even though she's been out of form for a considerable duration of time, her decline is something we were talking about. But I think it's performances like this, that kind of reiterates why she's such an important presence in that South African setup. You could see each run mattered to her. And when she got to a 50 as well, she had that whole celebration thing going on. The century was just so, special for her. I'm sure she would have wanted to, carry on and just go all guns blazing, get an even bigger total. But that's when Harmanpreet Kaur, the skipper, finally trusted Harmanpreet Kaur, the bowler, to get herself in and just roll her arm, and she actually got that all important wicket. So that was like a big turning point, and we've seen right how the Chepauk pitch on day three just ends up. Sometimes favoring the bowlers as well. So India would want, kind of want to make the most of it. But at the same time, we need to, appreciate Suneli's knock. And today was like that perfect example of, how she could just set up the innings so well and complement Laura Wolvaardt at the other end.
I mean, it was a very, very, very good partnership. Almost in great sync, the two of them, in understanding ki kya karna hai, kya nahi karna. Indian bowlers also seemed all at sea. They weren't sure what plans to do. It really seemed very. They really seemed alright. They really seemed off color. Jeet, again, we've spoken about this in the first innings. We're going to sound like a broken record because we saw a repeat of what we saw yesterday. Today, bowlers weren't really hitting the lengths. Importantly, weren't hitting the lines at all, which meant it became a lot more easier for the Saffers to sort of get into their groove, to milk those runs, to milk those boundaries. And now they seem tired, and now we don't know what's the way forward. How do they look at this? Like it's sort of a pit that they've dug for themselves.
True, but I would still think that they need to find that last push because they still know that they are ahead of the game. It's a matter of taking 8 wickets, and more importantly, 3 crucial wickets of the 3 crucial batters that the South African 11 has. But having said that, if you look at the 12 wickets that have been taken and you focus upon the lengths, most of them have been in that proper length that a spinner should be bowling in the test match or in any format of the game. You look at the dismissal of Laura Wolvaardt in the first innings and Aneka Bosch in the second innings. You look at the length, they were very similar and both the balls stayed low. So it's consistently, you need to visualize that patch and you got to keep hitting that. It doesn't matter how the ball behaves, even if it goes straight on, it doesn't matter. We have seen the balls misbehave from time to time. So it's all about consistently hitting that patch and waiting for your wicket ball. You're going to get it. On subcontinent tracks, there is one ball which has the name of the batter on it. It's always going to get it. And that is where I think they lacked. Where Sunili's also is good actually over there is that, of course, India are ahead in the game by a huge margin. So they had enforced the follow on. And then they had the quick wicket of Aneka Bosch. So what that led to was having very aggressive field settings. Most of the fielders were close in and most of them were in catching positions. So all these had to do was just, hit any gap that she could. There was so many gaps. So there were a lot of runs, to accumulate, and she did that fantastically well. And that, of course, transition from a strike rate of mid-30s to over 50 in the second innings is again that confidence bit. Had she not got that score, had she not survived for that long in the first innings, we may not possibly have seen that aggressive approach. So Indians were really aggressive, but Sunili's also had the advantage of hitting those gaps and accumulating runs, and that too quickly. So good on her part. What she also stuck to was primarily scoring to the leg side. So, wagon wheel, most of the runs came to the leg side, which is exactly opposite of what Marzan Kaap had done the first innings, where she predominantly targeted the offside. So they have a lot of gaps to access, and they are doing that really, really well. But Indian spinners just need to find that last push going into day 4. I know day 4 there is this weather and everything, but I rarely, trust the weather in India and the weather forecast in India. I mean, it's better to be say from Swadesh and just look at the weather yourself and call it as you may see it. But India have to find that last push. They know that they are ahead. Just get those wickets, find your lines, be disciplined, and I think you should still be able to win this game.
Fair point that. In fact, I was just thinking about it. Ki, didn't Jeet mention at the end of day one ki South Africa will just want to push it till day four because rain is predicted on day four. So who knows? Who knows? The rain gods might probably sort of have mercy on the Proteas there. But once again, the bowling performance wasn't really the greatest. And given how good they were a few months ago against the likes of England and Australia and in the first innings just the other day, which is why we come to expect more of them. Aisa nahi ki the expectations I mean, we have these expectations out of thin air. Thin air. We have this because they've come up with those performances. Sure, they might have disappointed, but one bowler in particular didn't, and that, of course, was Sneh Rana. Neha 8 was 77. Second best test figures for an Indian woman ever. Third best test figures for any female cricketer in test history. That's phenomenal. Yeah, an 8 for just a third 8 for again. 8 for 77. Geez, did she clean up the tail? How good was she, yaar?
Yeah, I mean, the way Sneh Rana was bowling, it was like she's bowling on an entirely different surface. And she's the kind of player, right? A lot of people just write her off. They're like, she's only meant for red ball. As a white ball, mein unka zyada impact nahi hota. But every single time, she comes up with these performances to remind people that, hey, even though I take a lot of wickets in this red ball format, I'm still relevant for the other ones. And she's an absolute champion. If you just look at the trajectory of her career, we've seen injuries plaguing her career. We've seen a lot of times her being dropped, management decisions here and there, but yet she always has that smile on her face, gets you those wickets. Is one of the most bankable bowlers, right, in this format. We've seen her do that time and again. Can be very handy with the bat as well. Memories go back to that Test match versus England. That a very good partnership with Tanya Bhatia that she struck. But with the ball, she's an entirely different beast, and I think the figures speak for themselves, right? And on today, in this Test match, the kind of figures she has raked up, I think it's just unparalleled, compared to the other spinners. She just knows her skill set so well. She knows how to make the most of the surface, how to actually challenge the batters as well. So in that sense, I think she'll be very pleased with her performance. Makes a very strong case for herself, and yeah, it's that Sneh Rana fighter spirit and the story that we all love, right?
100%. We all love, didn't have the greatest of WPLs, but in red ball cricket, I don't think anyone's sort of contested her position in the 11. Jeet, once again, pick of the bowlers and how. मतलब सिर्फ दो ही bowlers ने wickets लिया और उसमें से एक ने 8 लिया है भाई. मतलब मजाक है क्या ये?
Ranaji is a utility player. I mean, you can't deny that in every facet of the game, man. So it's very good to see her do that. And I think on day two at the back end, she was hitting that rough, and of course, she was getting a lot of purchase out of that rough. So the good thing is, she tried to do that, and she also kept her lines very, very tight. The one bowler was still fairly disciplined, and she was rewarded for that. So good to see that. And second innings as well. I mean, India did the right thing by not giving the new ball to two pacers and of course going for the informed Sneh Rana. Just picked up 8 wickets, so why not give her the second over? So good on India's part as well. I know she hasn't taken single wicket in the second innings, but it's probably because of her that India were able to enforce a follow on and are in this particular situation. So you'd still want a lot more from her because of course she's the only spinner who's probably still delivering and getting the wickets that India needs. So heading into day four, again, I believe she's going to hold the key. If she can nip out a couple of early wickets, then I think India should be able to steal this game.
All right, clearly Jeet still harboring ambitions of India potentially winning here. Of course, make no mistake, India still that way in the driver's seat, still in pole position to win because make no mistake, batting 100 overs out isn't easy, especially not after you've already batted 80 odd overs the previous day. So if the bowlers are tired and will struggle, so will the batters. It's not that easy. And you also need to remember that it's a very inexperienced middle and lower order for South Africa. So once they get past the next 2-3 batters, and that's pretty much it. We saw how quickly they folded. 249 for 4. We all thought कि हाँ यहाँ से शायद बन सकता है 400 तक कहीं पे जा सकते हैं. They folded very quickly. Just 17 runs is what the last 6 wickets costed India. So something like that could very well happen tomorrow as well. Let's just take a couple of questions and then talk about day 4, our predictions and whatnot before we wrap today's review. Would the pitch ease out or deteriorate in the following days? Day भाई मतलब एक ही बचा है. Unlike men's cricket, यहाँ पे सिर्फ 4 दिन का होता है test match. Again, Neha, we spoke about the red soil surface. It dries very quickly, so it tends to crumble a lot more. Do you see it crumbling a lot more? Do you see sort of, very extravagant turn, low bounce and all of that happening tomorrow?
Yeah, definitely. Because it is a red soil pitch, I do have my concerns, that it will crack up a lot more. We will see it deteriorate further, kind of favor the spinners, and it'll be a real test, for the South African batters as well. And with this whole looming concern of the rain also being there, overcast conditions can also, play its role in dictating how the day's flow will go on. So I hope the Indian bowlers can make the most of the conditions, and considering how stable the South African batters, especially you have Laura Wolvaardt and Marzan Kaap right now, how they bat out that first session will be dictating the course of the rest of the match. So hopefully they can kind of stick it out, make a match out of it. Mostly we are headed for a draw itself, but if the pitch plays its tricks, then perhaps India can push for that win.
Fair enough. And Jeet, what about you? Because so far the surface that way, it's not the typical chipok surface. Like my mind goes back to the 21 test series that happened between India and England. Japa England, of course, did cry about the surface ki bahut chal kya raha hai. We saw the shortest test match in terms of balls faced in test history. Aisa wala seem to need. This surface isn't that bad. But what do you make of it? Do you expect it to deteriorate tomorrow?
I think the weather has played a part. If this was being played amidst peak summer, then things could have been very different because, of course, the sun is beating down on pitch and the red soil, of course, I mean, it's going to dry out a lot more quickly and deteriorate a lot more quickly. But even today, I mean, most of the day was under a thick cloud cover, so there was barely any sunlight on the pitch, which kind of you could see the impact of that. I mean, the pitch was staying almost the same as it was before. I mean, there was not a lot that was happening as you would have expected on a day three chip-off pitch. So I think the weather plays a part here. Tomorrow again, if it stays cloudy, then I don't see how a lot of change is going to happen. It's again that rough or those odd balls that are going to misbehave. But other than that, this pitch hasn't been the way you would expect, and I feel the weather has had a part to play.
Interesting point that the weather's definitely played a part, but they would still want the rain gods to sort of not rain down tomorrow. That's it, to pour down tomorrow. Let me just put it that way. But talking of day four, guys, we know what's at stake. We know what India will have to do. For them, it's all about getting those 8 wickets. South Africa trail by 105 runs, which potentially means that now they are in a position where they can try and set a target, however small, however petty it might be. But Neha, how do you look at this? Let's start from India's POV. What is their ideal case scenario? What would they want to do? Again, an innings defeat still is what they will want to look to achieve. Just get those wickets early and end the game then and there. Or क्या लग रहा है कैसे जाएंगे ये लोग?
Yeah, I mean, the ideal case scenario for India is to get those remaining 8 wickets and just bowl out South Africa, win by an innings and whatever little run, so to say. But to really make a contest out of it and, to end on that win or victory sort of note, South Africa will probably bat it out and set India a small target. Then probably, that chasing part is what could get interesting. India coming out to bat again. What are the strategies they would kind of put into play? So there are a lot of outcomes that are possible tomorrow, but in all likelihood, taking all the pitch and the conditions into account, perhaps India would get those wickets, because they've observed this pattern with South Africa. The moment you get those key wickets, it's like the floodgates open, and then you see wickets fall in clumps. Like the first innings of South Africa was a perfect example of that. The day started okay, they're taking those singles, taking those risky singles, so to say. But once the wickets started falling, it was just done and dusted, and they just crumbled for 266. So India would want to get those wickets, but if South Africa can actually make a match out of it, they trail by 105. If they can kind of ensure that deficit is accounted for and just put that small total, make a match out of it, I think the Chepauk crowd will be more than happy to actually see a very interesting encounter.
Fair enough. And Jeet, how do you look at this? Of course, Kaap has just walked in. Matlab, she's not played a lot of deliveries 2025. So as good as new that way as a batter. So you would expect her to get some runs. Laura's looking good. Kya lag raha hai? How will South Africa be looking at this? Still just focus on the draw, or probably try and sort of secure a win as well for themselves?
No, I think they would still be batting out for draw. That would still be their priority here. But with all due respect to South Africa, I feel it is India versus 3 wickets, because that is exactly what I mentioned yesterday as well. If you break that partnership of Nadine de Klerk and Marzan Kaap, others are very inexperienced. You can't really trust them or even back them to get the job done or hang in there, and to no fault of their own, they don't have that experience. So it's a very similar scenario heading into day four as well. It's just that instead of 2 batters, you've got 3 batters. There is the addition of Laura Wolvaardt as well, Marzan Kaap and Nadine de Klerk. Besides that, again, they've got Delmi Tucker, Sinalo Jafta, Neri Dirksen, and then Tumise Kukune in the two bowlers. So it's going to be very hard if India can, even take 2 wickets in the first session. I think the match is going to end rather quickly. But from South Africa's perspective, they've got to bat out time here. And in order to erase the entire deficit they've got, it's probably going to take them at least 3.5 hours. That's over a session and a half. Before that, it can't be done because you've got to understand their mindset as well. They are not playing for the win right now. They are looking to bat out time. So they are defensive. So the run rate also is fairly, quite low. So it's going to take a while for them to, erase that deficit completely and then take the lead and set a target. So that's probably far-fetched. So I'm not looking in that direction at the moment. But again, just bank upon these three batters, bat out time as much as you can. You'll get the runs, like I mentioned. India have set very aggressive fields, knowing that they are far ahead in this game. But as soon as those runs start to come, if this partnership develops, you'll start seeing, a couple of fielders from the catching positions, move out from that catching position and get into those defensive positions. And that's where as a batter that you are winning the battle here. Because that's where you could see the aggressive fielding team, becoming defensive. So that's a psychological win for you as the batting team. So just bat out time, runs will come, and then just take it from there.
I mean, in terms of how they'll have to go about it, the template is fairly out there. They batted at 2.7 runs per over, so no prizes for guessing ki boss, kal bhi waisa hi kuch hone wala. It'll be attritional cricket that South Africa will be focusing on, jahan pe just play it out, not focus on the boundaries. Laura was also very clear. 93 of 250, clearly not the kind of knock you would think of. Agar wo 93 runs banati even in a test match, you would think 150-200 ball mein kar legi. But she knows the importance of just sticking in there, consuming those deliveries. So clearly we can expect something similar tomorrow as well. I was thinking of the India-South Africa test, maybe 15 if I'm not wrong, the men's test match, jahan pe they played for the draw. This was, I don't know if it was Nagpur or Delhi, one of the test matches back then. Hashim Amla, Faf du Plessis, and of course AB de Villiers, all of them played like 200, 300 deliveries themselves, amongst themselves. It's something that they would also want to replicate, but make no mistake, it won't be easy because they still had the experience of playing test cricket. Now you're expecting people, even Maizan Cup, age-wise, sure, she might be older, she might be more experienced that way, but she herself is playing just her second test match. So it's not like she knows how to go about it. So it won't be easy for them. It's definitely going to be India's game to lose. Even now, the odds are staked heavily against South Africa, which is why it'll make for a very enticing encounter should South Africa be able to pull a rabbit out of their hat. The way I look at it though, agar wo pehle session mein, if they somehow are able to erase the deficit and restore parity by the end of the first session, let's say the 105 runs are scored in the first session, they can then probably look to bat the second session and see kahan pe ja sakta. I know it's too ideal कि विकेट ही नहीं जा रहा, आज अच्छा खेला इसका मतलब ये नहीं. Like Jeet said, all it takes is one ball. It can be a brain fade, it can be a ball that just stays low, it can be a ball that just turns from the rough, which is why it won't be easy. Jeet, you wanted to say something?
One more thing, just to add to that, also another thing to be factored in here is that it's a new ball, it's a harder ball. As the ball got softer, it was becoming a little bit easier for the batters. So it's a brand new cherry, just a few overs old. So that's also going to be a bit of a challenge for South African batters. Because again, we are going to see Sneh Rana probably taking that ball and maybe Dipti Sharma, bowling in tandem with her. So that's also going to be a challenge first up for them. So it's not going to be easy. But if these two batters can bat out time, I do expect someone like Nadine de Klerk to be a little bit more aggressive because she's a lot more naturally aggressive as a batter. So you're probably going to get runs from her side. So if they can bring the deficit down to say 20 to 30 when they lose a wicket and Nadine de Klerk walks in, you'll probably see a bit of a counter-attacking knock. There's an outside chance. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but knowing that she's a naturally aggressive batter, maybe we might see a counter-attack from her to ensure that, okay, now they at least have a lead and then probably they'll take it from there on.
Fair enough. Just one last bit of formality before we wrap today's review up. Neha, let's start with you. Prediction time. Tomorrow's top performer, because results mein to sirf do hi options hai. Who do you think could potentially be key from either side? Top performer of the day, kya lag raha hai, kaun hoga kal?
Okay, so for me, from a South African point of view, I think it's going to be Laura Wolvaardt. The way she's set her innings up, 252 balls to just get those 93 runs, the manner in which she's constructed her knock, I think she's going to be very instrumental to South Africa's prospects. The moment her wicket is gone, I think there's going to be a little bit of panic in that setup because there isn't a lot of batting left. And Marzan Cup would have been my other pick, but Laura, it seems like she's learned from her mistakes in that first innings to kind of not repeat them here. So I think she will, really come good for South Africa. And again, yeah, from a bowling perspective, I was thinking probably again of Sneh Rana. I'm going to probably put my money on her, right? Because if she's done that magic in the first innings, it isn't going to be very surprising if she can kind of replicate the same in that second innings. Different conditions tomorrow. Let's see, if she can make the most of it. And yeah, these are probably going to be my picks.
All right, what about you, Jeet? Top performer नहीं कहूँगा, X factor बोल दो, जो भी बोल दो. Key players for either side going into day 4.
I was going for the same names actually, Laura Wolvaardt and Sneh Rana, but just because she's gone for those names, I'll go for Nadine de Klerk with the bat. Like I mentioned, probably a counter-attacking knock that might come from her, or maybe even a stable resistance. I don't know, but she's probably going to perform quite well this time around in the second innings. In the first innings, also she showed glimpses of that, getting 39 or something. So I think she's going to be that X factor for South Africa tomorrow. For India, of course, I mean Sneh Rana 12 में से 8 wicket तो उसने लिए. So, but I'll go for Niti Sharma just to change things up because she can wipe off the tail and suddenly have 4 wickets in that wickets column and take the player of the match from nowhere. But any other point is, she might wipe off the tail and she's going to be important for that.
I mean, just to cap it off, I'll take the third of the 3 experienced South African batters. Yeah, unfortunately, as much as I love watching Sinalo Japta get some runs, as much as I love watching one of those inexperienced pros in Aniri Dirksen or any of them doing well, it doesn't seem likely. The odds are against them. But we are all here, bhai. Gaba sabko yaad hai because it was pulled off. Because the team was able to pull off something that was deemed unlikely by most of us. So we're all for that. From an India POV, I'm hoping Renuka Singh Thakur comes into the game. New ball hai. I don't know वहाँ पे कुछ होगा. But first session, she's definitely going to get the ball. थोड़ा तो एक end से कहीं से कुछ निकाल पाई. If she's able to account for one of them and sort of, just break open the door for India, I'm pretty sure the rest will just slam it down. So which is why it will be crucial if she somehow is able to get a wicket. I know Indian Pacers or rather Pacers, haven't taken a wicket so far in the game, but it's not like they've bowled a lot. At best, they've bowled 20 or 25 overs cumulatively across the 2 innings. So let's see kya hoga wahan pe. Anyways, that's that from today's review. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will be back, of course, same time, 5:30 p.m. tomorrow, discussing the game, discussing the results, talking about what happened, what didn't. So far, a solid performance from South Africa. Just one more day to go. Hopefully, they will be able to put that medal on the pedal and do something good for themselves as well. Until then, it's a goodbye from all of us. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hope all the Team India fans are rejoicing. Hope all the Protea fans right now have overcome their miseries, their sorrows, and unfortunately won't be able to look past it. I know it's a very bitter pill to swallow. But thank you guys. Have a great Sunday and let the Monday blues not get the better of you.